Okay, so get this, quote, I feel we kind of glossed over the fact that her grandma was a serial killer. Glossed over, like finding an expired coupon.
For heaven's sake, context. That's from a reader review of Bitter House by Kiersten Modglin, not the actual book jacket copy. Though admittedly, the sentiment seems widespread.
Widespread? The woman might be Dexter Morgan in a housecoat, running a geriatric murder club. Forget context. That's the headline. Welcome back to Heart Book Radio, folks, where we dissect the books you pretend to read. I'm Roxy Riot.
And I'm Dr. Alistair Finch. Today's subject is Bitter House, a novel apparently causing quite the stir, not least because the author seems to publish books more frequently than some people change their socks.
Hey, leave Kiersten alone. She's prolific. Like a really efficient sausage factory of suspense. Anyway, the setup. Grandma Vera kicks the bucket, leaves her creepy mansion to granddaughter Bridget. But she has to share it with Cole, the jerkwad who made her childhood miserable.
Classic trope of forced proximity, unresolved animosity, fertile ground for predictable romantic entanglement, wouldn't you say?
Predictable. Is Grandma potentially offing dudes predictable? Is that predictable? Let's talk Vera Bitter. Cold. Mean. Kicked her orphaned grandkid out. Dies. Leaves a house full of secrets, and, apparently, bodies. Maybe in the garden. Skeletons. Literally.
The characterization appears to lean into the enigmatic matriarch with dark secrets, a common archetype. Reviewers describe her as cold, yes, but the narrative seems to frame her actions, however extreme, through letters left behind, perhaps attempting justification.
Justification. For being a serial killer. Oh, he was rude to the mailman, so, you know how compost. Is that the justification? And people are debating if she's cancelable. Honey, she's doing life, minimum. Unless the guys deserved it. One review said, I'm not saying the men don't deserve it. See. Vigilante Granny. Like Mrs. Doubtfire meets the Punisher.
That is a horrifying mental image. Let's move on to Bridget, the granddaughter. Inherits this situation. Forced to live with her childhood nemesis, Cole Warner, she seems positioned as the relatable victim Ange, sorting through trauma and bizarre daily revelations via letters.
Relatable. She moves into a murder house with the guy who probably put frogs in her lunchbox. Just because Grandma said so. Girl needs therapy. Not a floor plan. My cousin dated this guy whose mom collected porcelain dolls with real human hair. Bridget's got way bigger problems. And Cole. Oh, suddenly he's not a jerk anymore. Suddenly there's hate. Gimme a break.
The enemies to lovers arc is heavily implied. Reviewers mention a burgeoning romance, some even calling it a beautifully written love story, though others seem less enthused, particularly about certain intimate scenes.
Oh, don't get me started. One poor soul listening to the audiobook said, quote, major eye rolling. Too much detail. Wash my eyes out sex scene on audio. Wash their eyes out. Another one. I still want to vomit through graphic sex scenes. No thank you. Vomit. Over consensual adult relations in a thriller. What is this, the 1950s?
Perhaps the explicitness felt incongruous with the gothic mystery elements for some readers. It raises the question, does a graphic sex scene enhance or detract from suspense? Does it serve the plot, or is it merely gratuitous?
Who cares? It sounds hilarious. I bet the narrator was blushing. Anyway, is this book actually good? People are all over the place. Twists you don't see coming. Versus. A bit predictable. Holy cow, jaw on the floor. Versus. Probably my least favorite KM book.
The contradiction is fascinating. It suggests the central conceit, the potentially murderous grandmother, is either so outlandish it works as a shock, or so outlandish it strains credulity, making the resolution feel either inevitable or absurd. One reviewer even questioned the logistics. How did no one notice all their dinner guests never left? A fair point.
Maybe Vera was just a really good gardener. You know what? I've changed my mind. Grandma Vera is an icon. Forget predictable. She's serving cold revenge. Secrets are the most powerful thing a woman owns. The book says. Vera owned some big ones. Probably buried under the prize, winning petunias.
An icon? This reminds me of your absurd insistence that Moby Dick was solely about Melville's unresolved paternal issues rather than a complex allegory.
Oh, here we go. It was about daddy issues. Just like this is about granny issues. We got a listener email. Fake listener, obviously. Brenda from Boys asks, if Bridget finds proof Grandma Vera was a vigilante killer targeting bad guys, should she expose her posthumously or keep the secret?
That's actually a pertinent ethical dilemma posed by the narrative whole, assuming the premise holds. Does uncovering truth outweigh protecting a potentially skewed form of justice? Or family legacy? It's complex?
Complex. Nah. Keep the house, burn the letters. Plead the fifth. Okay, rating time. What's your verdict, Professor?
This sounds like narrative whiplash. Intriguing premise. Questionable execution based on reader feedback. And a potentially jarring tonal clash between gothic horror and explicit romance. I give it 2 out of 5 predictable plot points that still somehow manage to be utterly baffling.
Too harsh. It sounds bonkers. Which is my favorite genre. Serial killer grannies. Washing sex scenes. Forced cohabitation with your enemy. Sign me up. I give Bitter House 5 out of 7 skeletons in the garden. May they rest in pieces.
That's all the time we have. Join us next week when we tackle a real literary heavyweight, My Hamster, the Communist Spy. You won't want to miss it.
I assure you, I might. For Roxy Riot, I'm Dr. Alistair Finch. You've been listening to Heartbook Radio.